So obviously when we, like on Twitter and Facebook, when we asked for people to give us questions, a lot of the questions are about leadership. And so I kind of, as I thought about diving in a little bit to this book and talk about it a little bit. And of course you could spend, we could do 50 episodes, 10 hours each on this book. It's so dense and filled with information, not to mention it's 800 pages long.
Yeah.
There's, but I wanted to go a little bit deep on this one situation where David Hackworth, Colonel Hackworth, had now gone into Vietnam, and there was a battalion of soldiers, and they were kind of a disaster. They were kind of the standard of like what had happened with some of the poor leadership in Vietnam, and he took over. And again, just to kind of lay out what Hackworth was like, here's a quote that kind of starts off the chapter. Hackworth was essentially a legend. Just before he arrived, I recall going to the G1 and asking who the new battalion commander was going to be. The deputy G1 said, "Can't tell you. You know how personnel people are. They like to hip pocket everything. But he's Mr. Infantry." I thought, who the hell is Mr. Infantry? Of course, I'd read about David H. Hackworth. So his kind of nickname was Mr. Infantry. That was his reputation.
What does hip pocket mean?
Meaning, if the people that are in charge of personnel and moving people around inside the military, they know little bits of information, and instead of giving it to you, they keep it. They keep it close. They keep it in their hip pocket. That's all it means. And then to kind of explain though that, there's some people that go, yeah, this guy's a great leader. He's coming in, but to kind of show you what the attitude of the troops is. You got to remember, this is Vietnam. We got draftees, we got hippies, we got all kinds of anti-American. I mean, it's crazy times. Doc Holly, this is another quote who's from a medic, Charles Windsor. Doc Holly and I were sitting in the aid station drinking beer and saying, God, this is going to be hell. We've got some G.I. Joe lifer out here who's going to just ruin us. That was probably the lowest point of morale in the battalion. Not only had we been taking a lot of casualties, but now it looked as if someone was going to come in and kick ass and make career soldiers out of us. And it goes on to go through more quotes where they actually talk about a price on his head. The soldiers talked about, hey, we need to kill this guy before he gets us killed, which is just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You hear about that. You hear about that in Vietnam, this idea of, it's called fragging. There's a name for it. Hey, we're going to frag our officer. It means we're going to kill our own officer. And it's something that definitely happened. And it's this is a perfect case of where people talked about it possibly happening. So to get into this chapter a little bit, here's Hackworth talking about when he took over. There was no sense in showing this sorry outfit. I was in a state of shock. It wasn't just that the command post group slept on cots inside tents, that they had folding chairs and stateside footlockers, portable radios, and plastic coolers filled with beer and Coke at their fire base out in the field. More than that, it was that they had portable toilets too. So here he is. These guys are supposed to be out in the field, and they have all this luxury. And that's something that we saw in Iraq, where there was certain bases where they had Starbucks and Subway sandwiches, and McDonald's literally had those things. And the further you go out into the fray, you get guys. I remember visiting some on my first deployment to Iraq. We'd go out to some, there'd be guys, completely in the bush, living like just barely scraping by on 1 MRE a day. So now he's talking about the command post, and he says that the command post apparently were blissfully unaware that just nearby their troops were crapping on the ground and not even covering it up. So you have complete just disaster situation going on here. And then the general that's in charge of all these battalions, as he's about to put Hackworth in charge, a guy named General Ewell, says, it's a pussy battalion, and I want tigers, not pussies. But he'd gotten it wrong. With the 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry, that's who he was taking over, it was not a question of feline degree. As far as I could see, this unit was not even a military organization. So that's what this guy walked into, Colonel Hackworth. It was total, he goes on to say, it was total disintegration. Throughout the fire base, amid the shit and toilet paper and the machine gun ammo laying in the mud, were troops who wore love beads and peace symbols and looked more like something out of Haight-Ashbury than soldiers in the U.S. Army. All were low on spirit, and a few were high, openly, on marijuana. There was minimum security. Few men carried or cared for their weapons. Most had let them go red with rust as they strolled around without them. Grenades weren't taped, and when a unit moved out, most of the gunners wore their ammo Pancho Villa style, the ideal way to guarantee a weapon jam sometime down the track when dirty, dented cartridges were inserted into their M60s. So what we have here is a total lack of discipline.